Welcome to Verge File.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. You'll get intimacy when I feel like it, she said. No hesitation, no flinch, just the casual cruelty of someone who knew exactly where to cut. She didn't even look up from her phone, just kept scrolling like she hadn't just gutted me in the middle of our own kitchen. That tone, flat, detached, and dripping with the kind of power she thought she owned. I didn't answer, didn't move, didn't even blink. Then something unexpected happened. I smiled, not out of amusement, not sarcasm. It was the kind of smile you give when the fog lifts, when you finally understand the game you've been losing for years. She wasn't negotiating. She was declaring. And I wasn't her husband in that moment. I was background noise. So I walked out. Not in anger, not in protest. Just done. And that's the part she didn't notice. That night she climbed into bed, her back turned, like always. The silence between us had become its own routine. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, not replaying her words, but the years that led to them. The erosion had been slow. A laugh withheld here, a touch rationed there. Eye contact that used to linger, now passing straight through me. Intimacy turned into currency, handed out only when she decided I'd earned it. Looking back, she'd been saying that sentence for years without using those exact words. Tonight, she finally spoke it out loud. And that's when something inside me shifted, not with rage, but with precision. By morning, my plan was already taking shape. I woke up first. No coffee for her. No casual good morning. Not even a glance. Just grabbed my keys and left, ghosting my own house. I sat in my car for an hour before work, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't shock. It was clarity. She thought I was too comfortable to walk away, too loyal to leave, too silent to be dangerous. She mistook my patience for surrender. She was about to learn that silence is the sharpest blade there is. This wouldn't be loud. There would be no screaming, no slammed doors, no begging. I'd dismantle her power brick by brick, and she wouldn't even realize it until the walls caved in. That day, I started small. Didn't reach for her hand. Didn't ask about her day. Didn't check in with a text or a favor. The absence was subtle, but it had weight. She didn't notice, at first. But absence is like a leak in the ceiling. You don't hear it until the drip becomes a flood. And soon, she was going to drown in it. The first 2 days, she didn't notice. At breakfast, I sat across from her, scrolling through the news on my phone. No questions about her meetings, no small talk about the weather, no subtle reach for her hand while the coffee brewed. She talked about a canceled client call, a friend's birthday coming up, some trivial thing about her manager. I nodded once, kept my eyes down, and didn't respond. That night, I didn't rush home. The gym. A long drive with no destination. By the time I walked in, the house smelled faintly of takeout. Hers, not ours. She was curled up on the couch in a silk robe I hadn't seen in over a year, hair done, wine glass half full. The TV screen was paused, a movie cued like bait. "You're late," she said, like she'd been practicing the line. I kept moving toward the kitchen. Didn't realize there was a curfew. Her eyes flicked up. That one sentence had weight, and she felt it. I cleaned the counter where her empty containers sat, tossed them in the trash without a sigh or complaint, then went upstairs. The next evening, she tried harder. The table set for two. Pasta from scratch. Even a candle in the middle, flame flickering like a peace offering. I sat, ate, thanked her, then withdrew my hand when hers brushed against mine. No reaction, no apology. Just the continuation of my meal as though nothing had happened. She looked down at her plate. It was working. For years, she had built her position on control, affection on her schedule, attention when she decided it was earned, withholding, then acting as if I were the one who had grown cold. Now, the dynamic had shifted, and she was starting to feel the same emptiness I'd lived with for years. Within days, her behavior changed. She began sending texts during work hours. "Hope your morning's going well. What do you want for dinner? Miss you." I didn't ignore them. I answered, but only with scalpel-sharp brevity. "Thanks. Doesn't matter. All good." Each reply stripped of warmth. Each word a mirror to the distance she'd once weaponized. It unsettled her. I could see it in the way she lingered in doorways longer than necessary, the way her eyes searched my face when I passed. She wasn't used to being invisible. 3 nights later, I came home to find her wearing makeup to bed, a thin layer of perfume clinging to the sheets. The gesture wasn't subtle, it was desperate. But I didn't touch her. I didn't even mention it. Because now she was chasing. And the moment someone starts chasing, they lose the ground they once stood on. I was no longer waiting for intimacy on her terms. I was setting the terms myself. And she had no idea how far I planned to take it. By the end of the week, her calm had cracks. Small at first, hairline fractures in the mask she wore. She called me at work in the middle of the day. It wasn't her style. Usually, I was the one checking in. Her voice was lighter than usual, almost cautious. "Just wanted to hear your voice," she said. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I simply asked if everything was okay. She gave a nervous laugh. "Yeah, just missed you, I guess." I didn't say it back. I let the pause stretch until she excused herself and hung up. It wasn't affection she was after, it was control. Control she'd felt slipping since the moment I stopped orbiting her. 2 nights later, I came home late again. She was dressed like we had plans. We didn't. She spoke quickly, almost too quickly. "There's a new place I've been wanting to try. We could go, maybe just talk a bit." I took off my jacket, calm and steady. "Already ate." I saw her face falter, just a fraction, before she covered it. "Maybe tomorrow, then?" I nodded once. "Maybe." Then walked upstairs without looking back. That same week, I began moving my salary into a private account. Quietly, cleanly. Passwords reset. Direct deposits rerouted. She didn't notice, yet. I started closing the little luxuries she never acknowledged came from me. Streaming services, subscription boxes, automatic payments she assumed were endless. The first ripple hit on a Thursday night. She called from the living room, frustration in her voice. "Something's wrong with Netflix." I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, she repeated herself, louder. Still nothing. Eventually, the sound of her phone filled the air, scrolling, searching for someone else to fix it. I kept my eyes on the spreadsheet in front of me, noting the growing balance in the account she would never touch. This wasn't about punishment. It was preparation. Her attempts at regaining ground became clumsy. One night, I caught her folding shirts in my laundry pile, shirts that didn't need folding. Her hand slipped into my jeans pocket just a little too deliberately, fishing for receipts. She found nothing, but the act itself told me everything. I didn't call her out. I didn't give her the confrontation she was baiting me for. I let her wonder. Because the more she wondered, the more she felt it. The distance she once thought was hers to control was now mine to weaponize. And that's the thing about silence. When you've been starved of it for years, you fear it. When you've been drowning in it by choice, you start to realize it's not the other person who's suffocating. It's you. She was starting to suffocate, and I was just getting started. I didn't have to wait long for the next shift. One evening, I came home later than usual. She was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, hair curled, dress fitted just right. On the stove, something simmered, an actual meal, not takeout. The table was set with our nicer plates, candles lit like it was some kind of anniversary. She turned when I walked in, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Thought we could have dinner together." I looked at the table, then at her, and gave a short nod. I sat down, ate, thanked her when I was finished, but didn't compliment the food, didn't linger. I got up, rinsed my plate, and went upstairs without another word. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel through the walls. By now, she had started sending me little reminders of herself during the day. Photos of the dog. A quick snapshot of her coffee with the caption, "Wish you were here." I replied to each one the same way. Polite, neutral, unrevealing. It wasn't enough for her. The next move came 2 days later. I walked into the bedroom to find her sitting at the vanity, putting on lipstick at 10 p.m. She wasn't going anywhere. It was for me to notice. But I didn't ask where she was headed. I just grabbed a book from my nightstand and left. That night, I lay on the couch in the living room, scrolling through emails while I heard her pacing upstairs. She was restless now. The confidence in her control was gone. And that's when I escalated. I began removing pieces of myself from the house. Not the obvious ones, but the things she wouldn't notice right away. A couple of framed photos from the hallway. My leather jacket from the coat rack. The watch she'd given me years ago, gone from the dresser. Each absence small enough to miss in the moment. But together they told a story. I was already leaving. One Saturday morning, I left before sunrise, spent the entire day out. No explanation. When I returned, she was waiting in the living room. "You've been out a lot lately," she said. I simply nodded. She pressed, "With who?" I answered, "People," and walked past her. That one word hit harder than a fight ever could. She followed me into the kitchen, asking questions she would have once been too proud to ask. I gave her nothing. No anger. No warmth. Just the kind of calm that makes people uneasy because they know it's not an accident. It's a decision. She had spent years rationing closeness, offering it only when it suited her. Now she was living on rations herself, and I was the one controlling the supply. And the truth was, I'd barely started tightening the tap. Her next tactic was predictable: manufactured vulnerability. It started with little sighs when she thought I wasn't listening. Longer pauses before answering questions, as if she were lost in some deep, troubled thought. One evening, I came into the kitchen to find her sitting at the table with a half-empty glass of wine, swirling it like she was in the middle of some private crisis. She looked up, eyes soft, like she wanted me to ask. I didn't. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and left without saying a word. That was when the late-night texts began. Short, vague messages sent from upstairs while I was downstairs. "Can we talk?" Or, "I've been thinking about us." I didn't respond right away. Sometimes, I didn't respond at all. The first real crack showed during a Saturday morning coffee run. I came back with a single cup. She looked at it, confused. "No coffee for me?" she asked. I said, "Didn't know you wanted one." That pause, just a beat too long before she forced a smile, told me everything. I could feel the shift. She wasn't playing defense anymore. She was trying to regain ground she didn't know how to hold. And that's when I took the next step. I started spending money in a way that removed her from the equation. I booked a short trip for myself, 2 nights, a cabin in the mountains. No invitation extended. I didn't even tell her until the day before. "I'll be gone this weekend," I said, grabbing my keys. She asked where I was going. "Away." That was all. The weekend was quiet. No calls from me. No explanations. When I came back, the house felt different. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, trying to look casual. But her eyes gave her away. Narrow, searching, calculating. That night, she came to bed wearing perfume and a slip of silk I hadn't seen in years. She lay closer than she had in months, her hand resting on my arm. I didn't move it away, but I didn't respond either. No shift toward her. No acknowledgement. Just stillness. Her breathing changed after a few minutes. Shallow, uneven. That was the sound of someone realizing they were losing. She had once been the one who decided when intimacy happened. Now she was offering it without conditions, and I was the one choosing when to accept, or, in this case, when not to. Because this wasn't about touch anymore. It was about control. And for the first time in years, it was entirely mine. By now, the change in her was impossible to miss. She lingered more when I walked into a room, as if proximity alone might bridge the gap. She started asking questions she never used to: where I'd been, who I'd seen, what time I'd be home. I answered each one with the same measured calm, brief, factual, unshakable. One evening, I came home to find her in the living room, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. She looked up as I passed. "We should go out this weekend," she said, like it was a casual thought. I didn't stop walking. "I've got plans." She blinked. "With who?" I turned, holding her gaze for a moment. "Friends." Then I went upstairs. That night, I began removing my most personal things from the house. My passport, important documents, a few sentimental items I didn't want in her reach. I stored them in a locked box in my car. Small, deliberate steps. She wouldn't notice yet, but soon, she would feel the absence. The next morning, she tried a different approach: nostalgia. She made breakfast, just like she used to when we first moved in together. Eggs, toast, coffee for 2. She placed a plate in front of me, smiling as if she could will me back into the man I was before. I ate, thanked her, and left without sitting for a second cup. She didn't understand that I wasn't withholding affection to punish her. I was dismantling the system she had built, brick by brick, until there was nothing left for her to control. The turning point came that Friday. I arrived home to find her in the driveway, waiting. She leaned against the car, dressed for a night out. Heels, lipstick, the works. "Let's go somewhere," she said. Not a question, a plea disguised as a suggestion. I looked at her for a long moment before unlocking the door and stepping past her. Not tonight. Her voice followed me in, a little sharper this time. What's going on with you? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one, but because she didn't deserve to hear it. Inside, I could hear her pacing, her heels clicking against the floor. The woman who once dictated the terms of closeness was now chasing it, and every step she took toward me only widened the gap. She thought intimacy was something she could ration out when it suited her. Now she was learning what it felt like when the person on the other side stops asking for it altogether. And here's the part she hadn't figured out yet. I wasn't just pulling away. I was preparing to disappear. The first visible crack came when she tried to reclaim the bedroom. For weeks, I'd been keeping my distance, sleeping on the far edge of the mattress, waking before her, leaving the house before we could share more than a glance. But one night, I walked in to find the room transformed. New sheets, candles lit on the dresser, her perfume hanging heavy in the air. She sat on the edge of the bed in lingerie I hadn't seen in years. She didn't say a word, just crossed her legs slowly, waiting for me to notice. I set my phone on the nightstand, sat down, and started unlacing my shoes. No double take, no comment, no acknowledgement of the trap she'd set. I climbed into bed, pulled the blanket over myself, and lay there staring at the ceiling. Her breathing shifted after a few minutes, slower, heavier. It wasn't sleep. It was defeat. The next day, she overcompensated. She texted me mid-morning, asking if I wanted to grab lunch. I replied 2 hours later. Busy. That evening, she suggested we watch a movie together. I told her I had work to do. Each rejection was calm, even, free of anger, because anger would have given her something to push against. Instead, I gave her nothing. While she was at work, I moved more of my things into the trunk of my car. A few shirts, my shaving kit, a framed photo of my parents. Piece by piece, I was removing my presence from the house without leaving a trace she could point to in the moment. That Friday, I made my biggest move yet. I withdrew half of what was in our joint savings and placed it in my private account. Not everything. Just enough that she'd notice eventually when she reached for it. The money was mine too, but I knew the shock wouldn't be about legality. It would be about the sudden realization that she no longer had unchallenged access. 2 days later, she brought up the bedroom again. This time, she tried to sound casual. "We've been distant lately," she said over dinner. "Maybe we should fix that." I nodded once, finished my meal, and got up to wash my plate. No agreement. No disagreement. Just a silence that told her she wasn't the one deciding when, or if, that bridge would be crossed. Because she wasn't in control anymore. She had spent years teaching me to live without her touch. Now she was the one lying awake at night, wondering when it would come back. And I wasn't planning on giving her the answer. By now, the energy in the house had shifted completely. She had gone from indifferent to restless, from restless to anxious. Now she hovered, constantly in my space, searching for openings. When I left a room, she followed under the pretense of conversation. When I came home, she lingered in doorways, pretending to be in the middle of something just to intercept me. One Tuesday evening, I walked in to find her cooking dinner, something elaborate, the kind of meal she hadn't made in over a year. She set 2 plates down, poured wine, and tried to pull me into small talk. I listened politely, answered when necessary, but my mind was elsewhere. When I finished eating, I thanked her, cleared my plate, and left the table without touching the wine. That was the night I took the final steps in securing my independence. I backed up every important file from my laptop to an encrypted drive. I cleared my personal photos from the shared cloud account. I changed the passwords to my email, my bank, and my phone. By midnight, there was nothing left in the digital world she could access. 2 days later, she noticed. I was at the kitchen counter when she asked if I'd changed the Netflix password. I said yes. She asked why. I told her I just wanted things simplified. The way she stared at me, lips pressed together, told me she understood exactly what was happening. She just didn't know how far it had gone. The following weekend, she made her boldest move yet. She came into the living room wearing my old hoodie, the one she used to steal when we were dating. She curled up at the far end of the couch, pulled her knees to her chest, and said softly, "I miss us." I didn't look up from my book. The silence stretched until she gave up and left the room. Minutes later, I heard the bedroom door close, not the slam of anger, but the click of someone retreating because they have no other play left. I wasn't being cruel. I was being deliberate. Every measured action was cutting away her ability to reset the narrative. For years, she'd made me wait for closeness on her terms, dangling it like a prize. Now, the prize no longer existed, and the rules were mine. She was starting to realize something she'd never considered before, that the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And I had perfected it. The more control she lost, the more reckless her attempts became. She started appearing at places she knew I went, my gym, the coffee shop down the street, even the hardware store on Saturday mornings. Always with the same smile that was just a little too tight, a little too rehearsed. She wanted me to believe it was coincidence, but we both knew better. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "I feel like you're not even trying anymore," she said. I rinsed my glass, set it in the sink, and walked past her. Not a word. Her shoulders stiffened as I passed, but she didn't follow. That was the moment I knew she was finished playing defense. The game was now survival. I'd already moved most of my personal things out of the house, but that week, I took the last step. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, signed the lease, and moved in essential furniture while she was at work. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make it livable. She wouldn't know until I was ready for her to. In the meantime, I kept dismantling her comfort. I transferred the last of my funds out of the joint account, leaving just enough to pay the utilities. I canceled the cleaning service. I stopped doing the grocery runs entirely. The fridge began to look as empty as the space between us. Her frustration turned into visible panic. She'd start conversations that went nowhere, bringing up old trips, inside jokes, anything that might pull me back into orbit. When that failed, she tried to provoke me, small jabs about my schedule, my clothes, even my friends. But I didn't bite. You can't start a fire without oxygen, and I was giving her none. The turning point came late on a Thursday night. I was in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when she appeared in the doorway. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller somehow. "I don't know what's happening to us," she said. I didn't look up. "You do," I said quietly. Her face went still, like the air had been knocked out of her. She turned and left without another word. I heard the bedroom door close and knew she was lying there, replaying everything that had led to this moment. Not just the last few months, but the years before. The truth was, I'd already left her in every way that mattered. All that was left now was the final step, and I was going to take it without looking back. The final move came on a Sunday morning. She was still asleep when I woke. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the woman who had once been my center, my constant. There was no anger left in me, no longing, just the quiet certainty that this chapter was done. I had packed everything the night before. The suitcase sat by the door, my keys in my pocket. The lease on my new apartment was signed. My accounts were secure. There was nothing left tying me to this house except her, and she had cut that thread herself long ago. I moved through the house in silence, taking one last look at the rooms we had filled together. The kitchen where we used to linger over coffee. The couch where she'd once fallen asleep against me without hesitation. All of it now just staging for a life that had ended long before I admitted it. When I stepped outside, the morning air was sharp, almost electric. I loaded my bag into the car and closed the trunk without a sound. No note, no goodbye, just the deliberate absence she'd never see coming. I drove across town to my new place, a small, uncluttered apartment that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. I unpacked slowly, hanging clothes in the closet, setting my few personal things on the shelves. It felt light here. No tension in the walls. No unspoken rules hanging over my head. By the time she woke, the house would already feel different. She'd noticed the missing clothes, the empty drawer, the absence of my wallet on the counter. She'd call, maybe even show up here. But I wouldn't answer. Not now. Not ever. She had spent years deciding when to give affection, when to allow closeness, keeping me at arm's length until she decided I'd earned more. In the end, she taught me how to live without her. And once I learned, there was no reason to go back. I sat by the window in my new living room, sipping coffee I'd made for myself, watching the city come alive. Somewhere across town, she would be moving through the house like it was a crime scene. Every missing item a clue, every silence louder than anything I could say. And that was the point. I wasn't leaving in anger. I wasn't leaving in grief. I was leaving in complete, unshakable clarity. She'd wanted intimacy on her terms. Now, she'd get silence on mine. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.